Welcome to Walls Explained. Today I'm showing you the steps I take to tackle this ceiling patch. I'll be sharing some basic tips as well as some more advanced techniques on how to make this look like it never happened. I'm using mesh tape for this patch. Since this isn't new construction, I like to apply a thin layer of mud first. It fills irregular gaps, helps tie different surfaces together, and ensures the mesh tape sticks even on tricky surfaces like eggshell paint, which won't hold tape the same way bare drywall does. To apply the tape, I hold my 6-inch spatula overhand, leaving my thumb and forefinger free to grab the end. I pull the tape out with my knife hand, let it spin freely in the other, and press it where it needs to go. Then I switch to an underhand grip, press the knife onto the tape, and tear it at a 45-degree angle for a clean, straight finish. When I cut the hole in the ceiling to check the plumbing above, I made sure to stay a few inches away from the wall. This avoids having to retape the corners and leaves enough space for backing when I install the new drywall piece. It may look like the drywall stops above the wall, but it actually terminates about an inch back where it breaks on a steel stud frame. There's no need to tape this angle. I'll repeat this process on the other side and then let this dry. This ceiling patch was opened up after a leak from the unit above. Once the moisture issue was addressed, the goal here was to restore the ceiling so the repair completely disappears. The patch itself is about 4 feet by 2 feet, and the main challenge here is that the patch is dished in. The middle is low and needs to be built out to meet the surrounding surface plane. This patch was low through the middle, so the goal of the first coat is to rebuild the surface plane. I'm loading my knife and starting at the shower head wall, then pulling toward the middle of the tub. I repeat that pass all the way down the patch, always working in the same direction. At this stage, I'm not trying to make it pretty. I'm laying material on fast and consistently. As I smooth it down, I'm reading the surface as I go. I avoid putting too much pressure in the middle, where the patch is low, and I add a little more pressure once I pass the taped area. That lets me flatten the built-up mud back into the surrounding ceiling. The important thing here is direction. I load the entire patch in one direction first, then even it out with consistent pressure. That's how you rebuild a surface plane without chasing it. Any lines or ridges don't matter yet. With Quickset, I can scrape those down right before the next coat. For the second coat, I switch directions. Now I'm working across the patch instead of with it. This helps flatten any remaining low spots and keeps me from just following the same lines from the first coat. This approach works on almost any patch, big or small. Build in one direction, refine in the other. Don't fight the wall. Read it, and let the pressure do the work. This coat is still doing some building, but it's also refining the shape and tightening the transitions at the perimeter. I'm using all-purpose compound here and leaving it a little thicker than usual to account for shrink back as it dries. On the second coat, knife pressure becomes really important. The tape line gives me a visual reference for where the surface planes should be, so I'm intentionally putting more pressure on the tape side of the knife. That pressure rides the tape and sets the height of the finish, while the inside edge of the knife is allowed to glide over the low area in the middle. That way, I'm rebuilding the low spot without guessing. The tape is telling me where the plane is, and the mud fills in underneath it. As the patch comes into plane, I can gradually even out my pressure and blend everything back into the surrounding ceiling. For Southwest hand texture, you want to add enough water to all-purpose joint compound to get the consistency of pancake batter, or just loose enough so that it can slide off your knife like you see here. As long as your technique is good, the thickness doesn't matter that much. Because my second coat was done with all-purpose compound, I didn't need a separate skim coat before texturing. If I finish with hot mud, I'll always skim with all-purpose to create a uniform surface and prevent flashing. But here, the all-purpose second coat already does that job. For the texture, I like to start at one end of the patch and build out from there. I overlap each pass slightly. That overlap helps the knife release the mud more consistently, especially as it chatters across the texture that was just laid down. This is a Southwest-style hand texture, common in Arizona and New Mexico. It's forgiving, blends well, and does a great job of hiding minor surface variations. After the texture has had a moment to rest and stiffen slightly, I'll knock it down with very gentle pressure. If you knock it down too soon, it will push your texture flat and it won't show up after paint. If you wait too long, the surface of the mud will dry and become tacky, making it impossible to slide your knife across without ruining your texture. Timing is everything. After prep, it's 2 coats of paint to bring the sheen and color back to uniform. I'm using a Dunn Edwards acrylic latex paint. This is where all the earlier steps pay off. If the surface plane is right, the patch disappears once it's painted. If you found this video helpful, feel free to give it a like. Also, subscribe for more drywall-related content.